Ooh, I see there's a new version of the pack out. Let's go ahead and check the changelog. Okay, alright, moving up to Create 6, that's nice. Gonna like to have some of that functionality. I see that we have Advanced AE, which is going to be great when we finally get around to that. Agricraft, that could be really good for farming and stuff. Draconic Evolution, whoa! Okay, we're going to be doing some crazy stuff with reactors, with that potentially down the line. Mostly just storage, I think. The reactor is a little bit scary, even with computer craft. Let's see, we've got forestry. Oh, Axel's going to love that. We've got a whole bunch of Tinker's Construct. Let's just make sure they're not removing anything too bad. Well, guess we're not updating until I find an alternative for those builds. Welcome back to my desktop? Welcome back to my desktop, yes, where we are here with some KubeJS edits that I did. Of note, if you are going to do this the same way that I did, we are currently using TNP Limitless 7 1.19 as the base pack. I don't know if any of this has been changed in the 1.20 version. At least in part because some of the patch notes just say, we fixed a lot of stuff, so we're not going to list them all here, which, kind of understandable. The public mostly doesn't need to know that, but I haven't played around in 1.20, so I don't know if the things that I'm doing with my KubeJS patch is done there, or if not, but either way, there are a couple of things with create sawing that I wanted to add, as well as I've already mentioned the azaleas in botany pots. They currently just output oak, which, yeah, that is the vanilla behavior, but we're in a mod pack, and azaleas have their own wood in this pack. So I want botany pots to drop that. So that's what we're doing this week. It's going to be a fairly short video where I go over some JavaScript. I'm also going to have some timestamps where you can see the fruits of our labor, kind of literally in some cases, down below. I'm also going to list the versions of the mods that I used here in the description, and I might even have a link to the KubeJS file that we're making here. But if you're going to play along, just remember to take your TNP Limitless 7 version 19, duplicate it, and then you've got something like this, a KubeJS testing version. If you're using Prism Launcher like I am, you're just going to click Edit. You're going to go to your mods, and you're going to click Download Mods. It's all showing up on the other screen because I did it on the other screen, but we're in here. So you're going to just search for Create and KubeJS. Create KubeJS and Botany Pots KubeJS. And if we come in here and we filter on Cube, because I've already done it, you can see that we've got KubeJS Create, version 2001.2.5 build 2. That's very important because a later version requires Create 6, and, well, as we've just been over, 1.19 TNP Limitless 7 doesn't. It's not on Create 6 just yet. And then Botany Pots, I'm pretty sure this is just the latest version. That's perfectly fine. Now we're going to hop into the actual JavaScript and how the references I used. So on the left is my file. It's not the prettiest. Let me also get rid of white space because you don't really need that. But it's like JavaScript, but it's not exactly 100% JavaScript, because one thing that I wanted to do, just getting into the development process a little bit, there are some walls in a few of the different mods that are made out of logs and also of the wood blocks, and they can be stripped. I just wasn't sure if I wanted to do that in Create or not, so originally what I had here was a suffix modifier, and we had just a default as empty. So in JavaScript, this will just assign blank as the default for suffix, and we would have uncommented all of these, and so it just would have generated ourselves a string for the specific mod blocks that we want. And if they were walls, we could change the suffix to _wall, and it would just add that to all of the stuff. And we'd be able to strip walls just as easily as we can wood and planks and stuff. I mean, wood and logs and stuff. But unfortunately, I tried this. This doesn't work. It causes a syntax error with the KubeJS parser. So KubeJS is not one-to-one with JavaScript. That's perfectly fine. We don't really care about that. So let's start at the very top. We've got this let cut time equals 50. That's going to come back later. Just remember that. We're defining a variable called cut time. We're setting it to 50. That's fine. Server events recipes. This is how we're hooking into the recipe call in KubeJS. So when it's registering stuff when the server starts up, I think, or whenever you type reload as a command, this hooks in and listens for when you're changing recipes. So that's all you need to know there. We've got a lambda that hooks into this event. So when we get that event, we have it in the rest of the code that we're about to see here. So I wrote a few helper functions. As you can see in editing recipes down at the bottom, we have this advanced techniques helper functions type thing going on here. And I pretty much just wrote out a couple of different helper functions that help us with cutting wood or stripping logs and all that whatnot. So at the very top, we have our function that takes in the mod name, the output type, and that's very important because obviously every recipe that we're adding needs to have an output type, and then also the input type. Now, because we are stripping specifically logs and also wood, I wanted to get really lazy because anytime you have an item that is a log, you're also probably going to have a version that is _wood. There's one exception that we're going to get to later, and that is unfortunately the one time that we don't use these functions, but we'll get there when we get there. So once we have the name of the mod, we build out 4 different strings for the items that we're concerning ourselves with. So we've got log, which is just mod, the input type of log, that's typically your type of wood. So using Minecraft, for example, say we just wanted vanilla Minecraft, it would be Minecraft is the mod, input type, let's say oak, and then this just appends log. So log would be Minecraft oak log. Very straightforward. So if we were adding a stripped recipe, which is already in there, we're just using Minecraft as our example because we haven't gotten to the mod section down below, we would have stripped log, which is Minecraft stripped oak _log. So you've got stripped oak log. We're just this is your input, this is your output. And then same thing with wood. We don't really need to go over that twice, do we? So then we have event.recipes.create. This is why we need the mod, because this by default isn't exposed in KubeJS as far as I'm aware, but we add that KubeJS create mod that we went over earlier, and we expose the create method of adding a cutting recipe. And over on the right hand side, you can see that we're referencing the KubeJS add-ons create cutting. And so then we put in our stripped log as the output, the log as the input, and remember, these are just strings that refer to the specific type of log name in-game. If you're doing this kind of thing, it also really helps if you turn on your tooltips in-game, that is F3+H on your keyboard, and it will show you what the name of a given item is with respect to this ID that you need when you're adding or modifying recipes. So then we're also using processing time. Originally I wanted to see what the default was, so it just looked something like that. It just terminated after the parentheses. But as you can see, not here. I think it's on the CurseForge page for the Create KubeJS mod, it gives a default time of 50. Or it gives an example time of 50 on the CurseForge page. And so when I was in game, I realized, okay, if we don't include the processing time, it's a lot slower than all of the logs that are already in there. So then I said, okay, let's add processing time. We'll start at 50 because they chose that number for a reason. And lo and behold, we have that cut time 50 comes back here and in a few other places, which is why we made it a constant so that we don't have to change it everywhere. But the 50 turned out to be the correct number. So now if you were to throw any of the logs or wood onto a saw, it'll process in the same amount of time as stuff that was already added by other mod compatibilities. So that is our stripping function. Then we have strippable logs, and what this does is it takes in the mod prefix and it takes in a list of logs that we want to be able to do things with. And so we've got list.forEach, and we're defining an internal function here that just calls strips, the function that we wrote before, for the mod, which is just passed through here. Strippable, which is something that's passed in by the for each. It basically says, for each item in the list that we're passing in here, take that item, call it strippable, and then make it put into the strips function. Now there's a reason that I added this output type and input type. Originally, they were both supposed to just be the same, because I was assuming that everything that I wanted to add was just wood. And it wasn't. And we'll get to that exception when we get to that exception. So that's why we have an input type and an output type, and here it's just strippable, because the input type and the output type are the same. It's just log versus stripped log. Fairly straightforward so far. I hope you all are following around. Then we move on to cut planks. And this is very similar. We just want to take in the mod ID and the wood type. And so we're taking stripped wood type, or stripped log and stripped wood of both wood types, and then we're adding that to planks, or we're converting that to planks. So you can see now we've got event.recipes.create.cutting item of. This is a new thing, because what we're doing up here, when we're just specifying it as a string, it will only ever output one item, which in the case of stripping makes sense because you're taking one wood and you're stripping it, which outputs just one stripped wood in every other case that you might be familiar with in Create. Down here, planks always output 6 when you saw them. That is, of course, different than vanilla behavior, but that's what Create does, so we're sticking with the Create-esque behavior. So we have item.of, which allows us to put in the item name, which is the planks in this case. So going back to our Minecraft example, it would be Minecraft:oak : planks. So we would be outputting 6 planks of whatever wood type that we've got. Then, of course, we still have our input type, which is stripped log, or down below, stripped wood. And once again, we've got the cut time set to 50, which I assume is 50 ticks, and then Create changes how long it actually takes based upon the RPMs that you're putting into your saw blade. Scrolling right along, we have cut wood to planks, which just takes in the mod name and, again, a list of wood types. So we've got for each, again, a function that defines the wood type, so it just takes each individual item, and it runs cut planks on it, which registers the additional plank recipes for each of the different types of woods that we want to add to this. So far, so good. Now we get into the, it looks complicated, but it really isn't. So we're going to define a few lists here. We've got one for deep ether, where we're calling strippable logs on deep ether, and we have each of the logs that come from that mod: rose root, yag root, crude root, conberry, and sun root. Then we move on to aether strippable logs with sky root. We could have just called, what is it called? We could have just called strips directly if we really wanted to, but I figured this was more like the convention that I was using for everything else, and in the unlikely event that ether adds more woods, then this is probably a good idea to do it like this. We can just, we can do comma new wood or something like that, and then all of a sudden we'd have the recipe for new wood. Then we move on to ether redux, which has field spruce, blight, willow, crystal, and glacier. Then we also had to add in a couple of custom recipes for ether skyroot, because the golden oak, when you strip the golden oak like log or wood, it returns skyroot. So it's an entirely different type of wood, technically speaking, which means that we can't follow the formula of just passing in the name twice. That's one of the exceptions that we had when trying to do this whole strips thing. But at least with the code as it's currently written, we can do that. We can say, hey, output skyroot stripped stuff if you put in a golden oak log or golden oak wood. Same thing down here with Aether Redux, we have the Blight Willow, and if you take a sporing Blight Willow and you strip it, you get just stripped Blight Willow. So that's why we put it in like this. Lastly, we have the exceptions that I couldn't handle using that same kind of replace and append kind of approach that I did everywhere else. So we have to manually register these two recipes outside of the functions. We have event.recipes.create.cutting, Aether Redux, stripped cloudcap stem, because they included mushroom blocks, friends. Much like the vanilla mushrooms, or I should say, probably like the crimson stem and the warped stem. Those are technically stems. I don't think they are underscore wood or underscore log. I think they are underscore stem. And that makes them different, at least with respect to my code. So, same thing with Aether Redux. We have stripped cloudcap stem and cloudcap stem. So even though we're just adding stripped here, unfortunately, I don't think I have access to regexes. Otherwise, I would love to just be able to say like, hey, do a regex where we take this, or we take this part of, no, we take this part of the back half or whatever, and then we just put stripped in front of it, that kind of thing. There might actually be a way to do that. I might need to think about that. I don't know if they have string replacement in this stripped down version of JavaScript, but if they do, I might change that. And then we did the same thing here with the cutting recipe for the cloudcap hyphae, or hyphae? I don't know how you pronounce that, but that is the equivalent of wood to the cloudcap stem. So that is to say, this is the one that you're going to see the rings of the log, and this is the one where you're going to see the bark on all 6 sides. And so that's just the difference between those two. And I feel like, oh yeah, there's another exception for jelly shroom down later, but we'll talk about that in a bit. One thing that I want to get into is that I am familiar with, I think it's called ZenScript, with the purposes of adding or changing recipes. And one thing that lets you do is you can select items from a given mod that have like a certain tag, or, you know, have a specific ID type. So I could just have done that, get all of the different types of wood there, and then probably do some kind of regex find replace thing where I could just put in the stripped, and basically it would make all of this looping stuff and IDing easier. Like, we wouldn't have to manually put on all the names of the woods. But I don't know if there's any way to do that in KubeJS. So if there is, and you happen to know KubeJS better than I do, let me know down in the comments section, especially if you have a link to an example. I am very visual when it comes to that sort of thing. So please just let me know if you happen to know if there is a way that I could, like, say, get all of the logs from Deep Ether, for example, and not have to hard code this kind of a list. That would be ideal. But we keep moving on, so we've gotten past the cloudcap stuff. Now we are adding our cut wood to plank stuff, so this just adds the planks for roseroot and deep ether, ether, redux, and all that whatnot. We have, once again, an exception for the stem and hyphae specifically. And then we also have another thing in Aether Redux called the jelly shroom. It is also a mushroom, it just doesn't have strippable wood like the cloudcap does. So that's why we didn't see that up here in our exceptions list where we're stripping stuff, but we do need it down here because there wasn't any recipe for the planks. So now we've defined all of our cutting and stripping stuff. Now we get into the let's add things for botany pots, or I should say, let's remove things for botany pots. So if I go to editing recipes real quick, we're going to scroll up to remove recipes. And this is another thing that I want to say that F3H helps you out with. If you mouse over a recipe in JEI, like when you've got the recipe up, it will tell you both the ID of that recipe and what added that recipe. So in this case, we needed to remove the botany trees recipes for Minecraft Azalea and Minecraft Flowering Azalea. And so that's just what we do. I looked up the specific ID in JEI, and we got rid of these two. And then here is where we're going to replace stuff. And I wasn't entirely sure what I should use for some of these parameters at first, just looking at the KubeJS botany pots. I knew I wanted the crop section because that is what actually adds the growing phase. You can also define a soil type as well as a fertilizer type, but we're not adding either of those things, so that's fine. We are just redefining the azalea recipe. So unfortunately, I didn't know what any of this meant, which means that I went to the Botany Trees GitHub repo, and I took a look at their default JSON definitions, and using that as a base, I knew that we wanted the crop is Minecraft Azalea, we wanted the dirt type block, which allows us to use all of our mystical agriculture farmlands and other various blocks as defined. And it was really nice that they did it like this because I didn't want to have to find every single type of dirt that this azalea can grow on and basically just copy paste, type that all in here. Just typing dirt as the growing material is fine because it's under categories dirt. It just automatically does that, which is great. I'm very glad they did it like that. Now, here's the thing that we're actually changing. So, Minecraft Azalea, this is just what it displays as it's growing. That's exactly the same. We can see that we took that from... actually, I don't think we... Oh, no, yeah, here. Display. Minecraft Azalea. What we actually changed here, though, is on the right hand, we are outputting with 100% chance 1 oak log. That's not what we want anymore. We want azalea logs from Ecologics. And I don't know if, these roles are particularly the best, or if I feel like changing the balance at all. But we have a 100% chance of 2 to 4 rolls of the Ecologics azalea log now, with a 30% chance of getting an azalea sapling out of it again, and 1 to 3 azalea saplings, I should say. And that was taken from the oak. And the reason we did it like that is because, yes, vanilla azaleas do behave in such a way that they always drop an azalea tree, but in modded, they behave more like actual trees like oaks, where when you break the leaves, there's a certain % chance that each leaf gives you a sapling. And so if we look at oak sapling, they've got a 0.15% chance. And so I was like, or not 0.15%, 15% chance, which is 0.15 in decimal format. So I said, okay, 30% chance that we get azaleas, that's fine. That may even be overkill by a little bit. I don't care. Then, another unique property of azaleas, in Ecologics at least, is that there's always a chance that you get flowering logs or flowering azaleas from a non-flowering azalea sprout, tree, whatever. So I gave a 5% chance that we get one of these logs out of it, exactly 1 log specifically, and then another 5% chance that we get a flowering azalea sapling type thing, bush, whatever, with, 1 roll, potentially. If we move on to the flowering azalea, I've tweaked the percentages. So, now you've got a 100% chance to get 1 to 3 flowering azalea logs, a 30% chance to get 1 to 3 flowering azalea shrubs, a 10% chance to get 1 to 2 regular azalea logs, and then another 10% chance to get a regular azalea sapling. So, here you have a small chance of getting the flowering stuff. Here you've got a much better chance of getting the flowering stuff. but you still have a chance to get more of the regular logs, just because that's also how the Ecologic's trees grow up. Even if you plant a flowering azalea, not all of the logs are going to be flowering. So I kind of wanted to try and get that sort of feel. And now I'm going to pop into game, and we're going to hopefully see the fruits of our labor and clean out the barrels that are under the azaleas, because they might still have some remnant oak in it, and I don't want that to just sit there. So let's hop onto the server real quick. Welcome back to TEYARA SMP, the server at least, and we are here just to demonstrate that the KubeJS changes have in fact worked, despite the fact that this is the regular pack. If I go into mods and I search up cube, we just have KubeJS. That's it, because the mods are installed on the server and they're doing the recipe edits on the server. When we pull up our inventory, which I realize is the first time that I'm doing this instance, but I search ether and stripped, and if I left click on any of these, click, we now have sawing. And if I mouse over the recipe, you can see that the recipe is by create, quote unquote, because it's just the create mod that governs this kind of thing, but the recipe ID is create KJS KubeJS. And then this long alphanumeric string, which is probably just a UID. I've not found a way how to make the recipe names more fancy yet. I think there's a way that you can do it kind of for all of the things in your recipe file, but I don't want to be lumping the create stuff in with the Botany pot stuff, and I also don't want to accidentally override any of the recipe names that are in the other KubeJS files that are actually part of the pack. But the point is, we've clearly just added these recipes to the server. And also, if I take a look at azalea, and I left click on this, and we open the crops, you can see that now we've got 25 different recipes to get this thing, and you can see that the recipes have updated such that azalea can be planted on some kind of dirt, and we get azalea log, azalea, flowering azalea log, and flowering azalea, and they all have the chances out of 100 that we specified in the pack. And of course, if we click this way, you can also see that our recipes for flowering azaleas have taken effect too, because they also have a chance to produce azalea trees. And now let's go ahead and test. Well, first let's see. Oh yeah, we can definitely see that this has been running for a little bit. I made that change yesterday and just hadn't logged onto the server until then. You can see that we are getting a higher percentage of the azalea logs than the flowering azalea logs, and that is kind of what I wanted. I think we're already maxed out on azalea trees themselves, which is probably a good thing in general, but these will eventually fill up as the trees grow, and we will eventually have all of the flowering logs as well. It's a little bit overkill, because if you strip a flowering log, it's just the same as stripped azalea log, but that's okay. Let's come over here real quick and track down azaleas, which are just on the left side here, right here. Yes. So if we come into here, I kind of just want to clear out the entire drawer just so we have more accurate statistics ongoing. Not that we're actually really tracking anything, but it would really bug me if I just left the partial set in there and it wasn't all the way aligned either. So we're just going to let that flow into the system real quick. We are back over at the sawmill, and real quick, I need to change the filter on this thing. Now, I happen to know that Botany living wood is now theoretically supported, I guess as of the 1.19 pack. So when I added this, I guess we were still in 1.18. I haven't tested it. I still don't have Botany living wood glimmering. So we're just going to leave that on the tag for now, but we need to get rid of the added by deep ether, and I need to figure out how I can do that. Is that possible? Do I just... Okay, so we can't actually adjust that here, which is a little bit unfortunate. So I'm going to have to blow this away. We're going to still need is tagged Minecraft logs and is not tagged glimmering living wood logs. So let's do that. And let's go ahead and put in some of our varieties here. You can see that I've added some versions of the alternate logs as well, and we should expect that the Blight Willow will just merge with the Blight Willow, and the Skyroot will merge with the Golden Oak down the line because we're getting rid of the special properties of these two. But then we should have stripped versions of the rest of these logs, so let's just put everything in. I'm hoping that it kind of picks randomly which log it does, but otherwise we expect to see it in roughly this order. And theoretically, as long as I've done is tagged stripped, that might have been the real problem. I don't know if the Botany, or the Botania Living Wood stuff was tagged Minecraft stripped logs, and that's something that I also don't know about here. We might, if it starts placing here, we've done everything correctly. We haven't done everything correctly. Forge stripped logs, create vanilla stripped logs, modded stripped logs. Okay, so we might just need to add a stripped logs tag to the stuff, and that's fairly trivial. I mean, I'll have to do it after dinner, but that is a change that we can make on the server real quick and easy like. Okay, so I have theoretically edited the tags for all of the stripped logs, woods, and planks that I edited, basically adding the recipes to create. And so, theoretically, they should go through the saw, and we can just verify this with @aether stripped. And if I just drag one of these in, we should see that now it is added to forge stripped logs. Very good. So that means that now, on the other end, the problem was that it was getting to the saw blade, and even though it had the recipe in there, the filter was set to, I want to say, Minecraft stripped logs, Forge stripped logs, and a couple other things, like I want to say it was a create something or other stripped, you get the idea. The point is there were a whole bunch of stripped logs tags down there, but because the outputs of the saw didn't have that tag, they were basically just getting stuck in the system and then cycling around because, I mean, they never actually got stripped. So theoretically, now I should be able to put all these in. Theoretically. Moment of truth. And this time we should start seeing log action. Theoretically. And we're just kind of going in order. We are starting with the Skyroot log and just working our way through. And I'm probably not going to show all of these, just the exceptional ones. So like when we do Golden Oak, when we do the Spored Blightwood or whatever it's called, we'll probably do that one as well. But I mostly just want to see that this works. I also kind of want to see what order it outputs in, because even though I input a fixed order, yes, there we go, that was the problem. I just needed to update the tags, and I think that's the same problem with the Botania stuff. I don't think it's tagged like forged stripped logs or whatever, so I think I just need to add that to my script at some point in time. And as I was looking at potential candidates or whatever, I found that there are actually a lot of logs that have stripped versions that are not properly tagged. So I think I might go through at some point in time, add those all to the script. But for now, the updated version that has all the tags is in the description linked, probably via Dropbox. And the main difference is, A, I abstracted out the lists of the woods, so now you just have those as constants up at the top, and I refer to them in the section that we previously talked about. But then down at the bottom, we also have another event handler specifically related to tags, and so that is how we deal with tag handling. Because apparently, you can't update tags in the recipe section, it doesn't know what to do with that. But there is a dedicated tag handling event, and that's where you register tags there. And as we can see, the Gilded Oak, or whatever it's called, has come through as the stripped Skyroot log. So this has worked. It's a little bit sad though, because now we're getting rid of the thing that made it pretty. I kind of wish it worked a little bit more like the Botania Glittering Living Wood, because that at least retains some of the green gleam. And now we're just going to skip ahead, probably straight to when I have all of the stripped versions here. Oh, what? Oh, okay, so we have another tag issue, I think. But theoretically that means that that is technically speaking full, which doesn't make any sense to me. Let's put these away. Oh, okay, yeah, that counts as 5. Okay, so, there's something not right about one of these logs. Or, you know, just these logs in general. Let's switch this around, let's see... Oh, why don't these count as logs? Well, that's something that I can very easily add to the script. And is it all just Aether Redux? It's all just Aether Redux. Dang, okay. Alright. Well, I think I'll add those changes to the script after the video, but before I release it. So, I think that's going to do it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe, and click that bell to be notified. And as always, I'm looking forward to your feedback in the comments below. And with that, I will catch you on the flip side. Thanks for watching, everybody. In the upper left is the next video in the series, or a video you might like. In the lower left is the series playlist, and on the right is my icon by which you can subscribe. Thanks again for watching.